Hey there, welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 231. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to talk about today is all of the brand new action figures I got for Christmas. As you can probably tell, depending on when you're watching this, it is Christmas time when I'm filming it. It is December 27th as I sit down to do this. Hopefully I'll have the video posted, if not later today, but maybe up by the 28th or so. And yeah, I wanted to show you these toys, and hopefully I might even get another video posted in the next couple of days just to finally show you and kind of review everything I've gotten this year in 2022. That way I can wrap up the year with my best of list, and everything that I show you in those videos you will have already seen in a previous review. I don't know if I'm going to have time, because besides the stuff I actually got gifted for Christmas, I did actually get a bunch of things I kind of purchased for myself or that showed up in the mail in the past week or so as well. So I'm going to try and do those in a separate video. But if I don't get to them until the new year, then whatever. So yeah, today it's just the Christmas stuff. So, first off, Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate Christmas. Happy holidays to those of you who might celebrate something else around this time of year. But I grew up, I celebrate Christmas, love Christmas, and I got lots of cool stuff. I'm a big kid at heart, and I don't think a single year has passed where I haven't got some toys for Christmas. However, that's not all I get. I am at least part adult. So I got some of the normal stuff too. This is a new hoodie. I got some new pants for lounging around in, new socks, new undies. I got lots of candies and chocolate. I'm not going to bore you with all that stuff. Although I did get something cool that, I don't know, maybe I'll update you guys on as I navigate my way through it. I have zero musical talents, but I have lots of musical aspirations from wanting to be in a band in high school and all that stuff. Anyway, as a total surprise, my wife got me a keyboard for Christmas. So that's something that I'm planning to have a lot of fun with, and my poor wife is going to have to suffer through it as I figure it out. So anyway, the toys that I got this year. Again, some really cool stuff. So maybe I'll start with kind of the smallest one. This is something my brother Doug gifted to me. Now, I've seen these things around at the dollar store for the past few weeks, and or maybe even past few months, and I didn't think I was going to pull the trigger on them, but it's these G.I. Joe kind of like knockoff Lego sets. The brand is Forever Clever, licensed from Hasbro. And I've seen like 3 or 4 different sets. They're all small little vehicles, such as so this here is the Cobra Ferret, which is like an ATV. The other things they show on the back of the package are the Cobra Fang, the Hiss, the Night Raven, and the Rattler. I imagine those would be bigger sets. I don't think I've seen any of those before. But I feel I've seen 1 or 2, maybe the G.I. Joe Ram motorcycle, even though it's not featured on this packaging. Anyway, they're neat, and I love seeing that kind of retro-style G.I. Joe packaging on the shelves. It's just, it brings me right back to my childhood when I see this stuff. However, a couple of years ago, Hasbro had their own brand of knockoff Lego called Creo, and they put out a line of Creo G.I. Joes. And I kind of went all in on that. I bought all the little blind packs of figures. I bought all the big sets that I could get my hands on. And I have most of it. I think the only pieces I'm missing are the Cobra Terrordrome and maybe one other. But I've got a bunch of vehicles, a bunch of minifigures. I did a whole video on it a while ago. So if you're curious about those G.I. Joe Creo, check out this video I did. But anyway, so when I saw these, I thought, okay, well that's cool, but I already have a Cobra Ferret and a Storm Shadow of Creo. I'm guessing the Creo is higher quality than this stuff here. But as a little stocking stuffer, this is the kind of thing that I love getting Christmas morning. It's something I have to build, so it takes up a little bit of time, gives me some activity to do. So it was a lot of fun. So thank you, Brother Doug, for getting me this. I will tell you, I have opened it up, and I have built it. I think it was 45 pieces, they say. But I think they might have cheated a little bit, because the Lego man, he came like his arms were separate, his hands were separate, both of his legs were separate. I feel when you get a Lego set, the man comes as, at most, he's maybe separated into 3 pieces: legs, torso, head. and I'm guessing they probably only count that as 3 pieces, maybe even 1 for the man. I don't know. I don't really buy Lego on the regular. But I think in this case, they counted every little hand and foot as a separate piece because there really wasn't a whole lot to this set. I was able to assemble it in a matter of minutes. And here it is. And, you know, it's cool. Like, for what it was, Christmas morning from the dollar store, only cost my brother, I think they were maybe $4 or something. So, totally worth the $4. But I will tell you, this is definitely not Lego quality. It falls apart very easy, and some of the pieces just don't click into place. Like, there's a couple little vents, a couple little black pieces. You can't really, you'll probably see them on the insert. But they fall right off. This gun on the side falls off if you look at it funny. There's nowhere really for Storm Shadow to sit. So, anyway, it's a little awkward, but it's a fun little thing. So, pretty cool and unexpected. I didn't think I was going to get that. Another kind of fun little thing I got here. This is also from my brother Doug. This is a Zorro Funko Pop. And we were out Christmas shopping together maybe a week and a half ago. And I picked up this Zorro and I hummed and hawed about it. And I was like, I kind of want this, but I'm supposed to be out shopping for other people. And, you know, it's not like if I'd seen a G.I. Joe or a Transformer I needed, I probably would have bought them without thinking about it. But Funko Pops is not a collection that I'm by any means a completist on. You know, there's a million of them. There's not like I collected the Zorro set, as far as I know. This is a one-and-done figure. There's no other, like, Zorro figures cross-promoted on the back of the packaging or anything like that. So, yeah, I just wasn't sure if I should buy it for myself. I didn't, but Doug, being the good guy that he is, he saw my conundrum, and he went and picked it up and added it to what will be my main Christmas present from him, which I'll show you in a second. But, yeah, so this was a nice little add-on. Very thoughtful of Doug to, you know, take this relatively inexpensive gift and add it to the other thing that he got me. But Zorro is exactly the type of character that I think Funko Pops are great for. Usually it's, you know, characters from, say, live-action movies that I really like, that I don't really need, like a photorealistic action figure of in my collection. Maybe they wouldn't really blend in anywhere. Like, for example, if I think of, you know, say, Bruce Willis from Die Hard. You know, John McClane, cool character. But if I got, like, say, a NECA version of him, he's like 7 inches tall. He doesn't really fit in with my G.I. Joes. He doesn't fit with my Transformers. He doesn't fit in with my Spawn figures. I don't really know where to put John McClane. He just kind of becomes this weird oddity in my collection. But when you get him in a Funko Pop, you display him with your Funko Pops, and they all kind of become a collection together. And I kind of see it as a good collection for all the little orphans. So, you know, I have characters from movies like Blade Runner and The Fifth Element and, you know, Labyrinth and Pee Wee Herman, and, you know, I've got wrestlers and hockey players and, like, so many weird and wonderful just, like, oddities. And Zorro, I feel, fits into that collection perfectly. He's just a one-and-done little figure. The thing is, just last year, I got a really cool little 3 3/4 inch Zorro figure from Boss Fight Studios. And then I bought the second one that they put out that came with his horse Tornado. And then they've got a few more coming out. And I'm not sure if I'm going to continue to buy them all. But all that is to say that I already have some really nice Zorro figures in my collection that I just recently acquired. And like I said, they are kind of oddities. They don't really fit in with much of my collection. But at least at that 3 3/4 inch scale, they fit in with most of my modern G.I. Joes and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's why I debated on not getting Zorro. But Doug got him for me, and he's awesome. So thank you, Doug. Now, the main thing that Doug got for me, and I think I already threw it in the box, but it was this Boba Fett figure from the Star Wars Black series. And this is a figure, it came out several months ago, and usually when I want something, I get it as soon as it comes out. I don't usually sit on figures like this for very long. And I think this figure looks awesome. Like, I love it. You know, he's got a removable helmet, which you never really got on Boba Fett figures in the past, and it fits him so snug. Sometimes you've got figures with removable helmets and stuff, and they always sat really big and awkward on the character's head. Like, at a glance, you wouldn't know this guy's helmet is removable because it's so in scale, it's so well proportioned. I really like it. Anyway, the reason I didn't buy this figure when it first came out is because, you know, my Star Wars Black series passion has been dwindling some. I still love Star Wars, but the figures they've been putting out have been kind of boring. It just feels like repaint after repaint. They've been putting out a lot of human characters from like series like Andor and stuff. And I just don't get as excited about the human characters. I like aliens and robots and things like that. So I haven't been buying very many Star Wars. I think I only got about 5 Star Wars figures this whole year. So when I'm not actively buying something, my excitement just kind of takes a dip. Boba Fett, I already have Boba Fett in his original costume from the original trilogy in my collection. So I was thinking, well, do I really need a Boba Fett just because he's in a different outfit? And plus, like, this is everything he comes with. He's got a helmet, a backpack, and a gun, which is pretty standard stuff for Boba Fett. And yet they marketed this guy as a deluxe figure. So, they had his backpack and his helmet and his gun packaged over here in a bigger box than you would normally get. And where most Star Wars Black Series are $30, $35 here in Canada, this guy was $50. And I just could not justify the price. If he was a new or unique character that I didn't have before, maybe I would have. But for a repeat character just in a different outfit, couldn't do it. But when it came time, when Doug was asking me, what do I want for Christmas? This is the kind of thing that was perfect. I'm like, it was readily available. I know they have a bunch of them at the Toys R Us in my neighborhood. I recommended that maybe he check this thing out. And that's what he did. And he's awesome. Really, really cool figure. Very pleased with him. All right, next up. So my dad, he usually leaves the Christmas shopping to my mom. There's been many Christmas mornings when I go to my house and I'm opening up a box and I get some, polo shirt, and my dad's like, "Oh, that's nice. Who gave you that?" And I'm like, "You did. It said from mom and dad on it." And he's like, "Oh, well, I hope you like it." Because, my mom does all the shopping. But every now and again, my dad, he sees something that it sparks in his mind, like Mike would like that. And he's got me some neat little stuff over the years. This year, he went out of his way to get me some, like, Batman socks and boxers. So he saw them somewhere and he thought I would like them. So sure enough. But then on top of that, he also gave me some cash. And he said, go get yourself something that you'll enjoy. Which he knows and I both know. That means getting an action figure. My mom would never buy me an action figure. Not as a grown man. She used to buy me toys as a kid. But she doesn't understand this hobby of mine. And so even if I tell her when she asks me, what do I want for Christmas? I say, Mom, it'd be really cool if you could buy me that Transformer. And she's like, I'm not buying you a Transformer. I'll buy you socks or something. And she just insists on doing that. So the fact that my dad gave me some cash and he said, go buy yourself something, I went and picked up something pretty cool. And this was another thing that I hadn't pulled the trigger on right away. It came out a couple of months ago. But it is an Amazon exclusive. And here, maybe I'll show you the box first. But it was this Amazon exclusive box set that featured Venom as well as 2 of the other symbiote characters, Riot and Agony. Now, what's cool about this set is they started making these symbiote characters several years ago now. Because if you're not familiar with the other symbiotes, you're probably all familiar with Venom, I would imagine. But early in the comic books, they created Venom. He was super popular. So then they created the spawn of Venom, which was Carnage. And then he was a big hit too. So then Marvel thought, well, how can we milk this further? So they had this evil organization called the Life Foundation basically kidnap Venom, and they pulled 5 more seeds out of him, I guess, and they created what is known as the Life Foundation symbiotes. So it was Riot, Agony, Scream, Lasher, and Phage, I think. Anyway, so I've had Lasher for several years, Scream for several years, Phage for a couple years, and it's the kind of thing that you kind of just wish they put out a box set in the first place of all 5 of them together, but instead they trickle them out year by year by year. So I've had 3 of them. I've wanted to complete the set. They finally gave us the last 2 we needed, but I was a little annoyed that they packaged it with another Venom figure. Because I like Venom, but I've already got a ton of Venoms in my collection, and it just felt like a way to force me to spend more money on a figure I really didn't want. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't really pull the trigger on this immediately. But anyway, when my dad gave me some cash, I said, all right, I'm getting myself that set. So first off, here is Riot. So you can see he is a big figure. So this guy, if he was sold individually, he would not be a $30, $35 figure. This guy would probably be a $50, $60 figure just in and of himself because he's really big and bulky. I'm pretty sure he shares the exact same body as the previously released Toxin, which is a whole nother symbiote character. Except he's got a new head. And I don't think this hand accessory is new. Again, you probably can't see it here, but hopefully you can see it. I'll do an insert later and you can see it. So he has the option to have 2 regular hands, or he has 1 removable hand and you get this big blade on the hand, which is how I have him displayed. Now, that's cool. Like, Carnage always used to turn his hand into blades, and I think in the first Venom live-action movie, Riot, if you recall, this was actually the main villain in that movie, and I think he was doing that a lot with his hands as blades. So I guess I kind of understand why they gave him that accessory. But I'm thinking this was probably reused from the Toxin. I can't remember if Toxin had one of these or not, but the reason I think that is because right on the box, there's a very brief description, just a sentence or 2 of each character, and it says of Riot, one of 5 sibling symbiotes harvested from Venom by the Life Foundation. The Riot symbiote shows a predilection for hammers and other bludgeoning weapons. So right there in his description, they say he likes to use big bashing, bludgeoning weapons rather than the blades used by some of his siblings. So the fact they gave him just 1 bladed hand feels kind of like lazy reuse to me, and I feel they probably should have, invested the money to give him a big hammer. Maybe they could have even repainted Sandman's hand, because Sandman has a big hammer hand. But regardless, he's a pretty cool figure. His proportions are a little weird. I felt the same way when I got Toxin. He feels almost like, I want to say, is it Sam Keith, the artist that created the Max? Kind of like that, but really heavy upper torso, and the legs just don't seem proportioned. They seem almost small, like he's a little exaggerated and cartoony. It's not bad, but it's not my favorite. I would have preferred if he's big up top that he's big all the way through instead of this kind of skewed, a little bit cartoony, unrealistic proportions. But anyway, cool character. Glad I got him. The other figure from the set here that I was looking forward to was Agony. So she looks great. And I was expecting them to basically repaint the Scream figure. And I've had Scream for several years. And I'll be honest, I don't love that figure. But she's definitely the more popular of these characters. She's gone on and had her own comic book series and stuff. I don't see a whole lot of Agony in the comic books, so I don't remember that much about her specifically. But I wanted her just to kind of complete the set. But now that I have her in my hand, I really like her, and I think this is superior to the Scream figure. I just like the sculpting on this. The colors on this are really nice. She's got her own unique vibe, and I just really like it. So this is probably the figure from the set I was looking forward to the most, and it lives up to my expectations. Very cool. I think there might have been some extra hands for her as well, but I've got all my stuff piled up in a little box here beside me. I don't see them immediately. I'll let you know at the end if I find some extra hands for her that I think she might have had. Anyway, the big surprise for me out of this set is how much I like this Venom. I did not want this Venom because I already have, I probably have at least 6 or 7 Venoms already in the Marvel Legends, not including the Venoms I have in other scales. I have 3 3/4 inch Venoms and Lego Venoms and Funko Pop Venoms or whatever. I got lots and lots of Venoms. I don't have any Riots or Agonies, so those were the first time I ever got those characters in my collection, which is why I wanted them. I thought the last thing I needed was another Venom. And honestly, if somebody had said to me, hey, Mike, I know you don't want to spend the money on that set because you feel like you're wasting money on another Venom. How about we go splits on it? You pay 2/3 and I pay 1/3 and I'll get the Venom and you get the other 2. I would have jumped at that chance and said absolutely. However, now that I've got this Venom in hand, I love it. And I don't know why. I think it might be a whole new sculpt for Venom. I thought it was going to be the exact same body I have a couple of times over. It doesn't look that different, and it might very well be the same. I'll have to do a comparison when I go do the side-by-sides. But I just feel like he's just the perfect proportions for Venom, and he's just got the right amount of sculpted detail on him. I love just the way his spider symbol is painted on this figure and everything. It looks really good. And the head, he's got 2 heads. Again, this one here that I've got him displayed with is his full Venom head with the big tongue that comes out and wraps around his whole head. And it looks great. I didn't think I'd like this head because I'm more of a non-tongue Venom guy. But I think this one actually looks really cool. He looks really scary. And then the other head has the symbiote kind of opening up, and you see Eddie Brock's head beneath. And it's really cool. It's cooler than I was expecting. Because I already have an unmasked Eddie Brock head for one of my Venoms downstairs. And I thought, so I didn't need this one that's half Venom and half Eddie. And I'm not going to display it with that head, but I'm really impressed with how it's sculpted and how well it captures the look of Venom's symbiote peeling off of his human face. So this might actually be my favorite figure of the pack, and I would not have expected that at all. So yeah, very cool. Thank you, Dad, for allowing me to get that set. Next up, I'll move on to one I got from my buddy Miguel. So I've already opened him up, but I'm going to do a side-by-side so you can see what he looked like in the package. But this is Apocalypse from the X-Men Retro series. So he came on a big blister card, like so, which is supposed to be reminiscent of the blister cards that the 90s X-Men figures from Toy Biz came on. So, it's very cool. So I cut the bubble off, but I'm going to save the packaging here. And this is a figure that I did not plan to buy. And like Venom, this is a figure that really has kind of surprised me. Because Miguel sometimes watches my videos, and I don't want him to feel bad and think that I didn't want this figure. But the thing is, Apocalypse is not one of my favorite characters. For one, he's a villain of the X-Men, and the X-Men just aren't one of my favorite characters. That's kind of a corner of the Marvel Universe I tend to not pay too much attention to. Not since the 80s or early 90s. But I do like Apocalypse. He's a cool-looking character. And a couple of years ago, you had to buy 6 or 7 other figures to create an Apocalypse Build-A-Figure. And I liked Apocalypse enough that I went and bought these 6 or 7 characters, which I might not have wanted all of those individuals, but I did it in order to complete my Build-A-Figure Apocalypse. So I have this figure already in his more comic book accurate colors, which are mostly blue and silver. And then a couple years ago, a couple years after I had the Build-A-Figure, they released an Age of Apocalypse version of Apocalypse, which is from an alternate future where he ruled the world or whatever. And I didn't even read that Age of Apocalypse storyline. I think that was around the time when me and my brother were kids, and he collected X-Men comic books and I read his comics. I think Age of Apocalypse is where he kind of said, I think I'm going to stop buying X-Men books. We just didn't care about this alternate reality that had taken over all of the books for a few months. And so, yeah, I have no real attachment to that Age of Apocalypse storyline. But I thought the Age of Apocalypse figure was so cool that I went and bought that as well. So now I have 2 Apocalypses in my collection already. So when this one was announced, which is just a repaint of the Build-A-Figure, except in cartoon colors. So you see the bulk of him now is purple rather than blue, and that's kind of how he looked in the X-Men animated series in the 90s. And to some people, this is probably the figure they've been dying to get because a lot of people were introduced to the X-Men through that cartoon. Me, I'm more of a comic book guy. So I don't have that nostalgic attachment to the animated look. However, so Miguel bought it for me, and I made it clear to him when he gave it to me. I'm like, this is really cool. I know I'm kind of hard to shop for because I buy so many figures, so if you want to buy me an action figure, you never know which ones I'm going to buy. This is one I was not going to buy, so it's a great pick because it's not like I don't like the figure. I've already bought 2 of him, and I would gladly take additional repaints. I would buy every repaint of every character they ever made if they were cheap enough, but this figure wasn't cheap. This is like a $50 plus figure. So anyway, I opened them up, and I really, really like it. It's not just the difference in colors, but for one thing, you see Apocalypse has these big hoses that attach from his belt buckle into his gauntlets, and that's kind of a defining, character trait, kind of a defining look of his design. And when I bought the Build-A-Figure, you had to buy a Wolverine figure to get just these hoses. And I thought, you know what, I'm not going to buy that extra Wolverine. I didn't need another Wolverine at the time. And I thought my Apocalypse figure is complete enough without these hoses. So my Build-A-Figure is not technically complete because I don't have those hoses. So I get those, which is a cool bonus. Plus, this Apocalypse had an interchangeable hand. So you see him there, he's got this big kind of blaster, like a cannon for a hand, which is pretty cool. So he has the option to have two hands, but I'm displaying him with the cannon because, again, that helps differentiate him from the Apocalypse I already have downstairs. Plus, he comes with these 3 blast effects, which are removable. So he's got, like, it looks like he's shooting lasers out of his cannon. So that's all really cool. Plus, this guy has 2 heads to choose from. Now, I'll be honest, I've had the Build-A-Figure Apocalypse for so many years, I can't remember if he had 2 heads to choose from as well. But regardless, this guy has 2 heads. One of them is kind of an angry, scowling face, and one of them is a more neutral face. So whichever head I have displayed on my Apocalypse downstairs, I'm just going to display this one with the opposite head. So it makes this figure pretty different because he's different colors, different head, different arms, got the tubing on his belt and everything. So yeah, this becomes like a whole new figure for me, and he's a good size, he's got a good weight to him, great sculpting. Really like it. So a very pleasant surprise, something I wouldn't have picked up on my own, but I'm glad that Miguel picked it up for me. So thanks, buddy. Now, I think everything I have left is from... Oh, actually, no. I got one from my brother, Brian. So, my brother, he lives in Miami. So, up here in Canada, we don't have Targets. We don't have Walgreens. So, usually I rely on my brother to pick me up store exclusives that I can't get up here in Canada. So, this year, he picked me up a G.I. Joe reaction figure, which is Ninja Ku, which he's kind of a obscure character from the G.I. Joe mythos. He's like in the vintage line, he wasn't in the American toy line. He was like a foreign repaint. But yeah, it's a really cool figure, and I did open him up. So you can see here with the blister card, I just cut the bubble off again, just like I did with Apocalypse. Now, I haven't actually taken this guy out of the bubble, though, because he's got so many small parts. And right now I'm up here by the Christmas tree, and the cat is always rooting around under the tree and batting things around. So I kept him in his little bubble here, so I didn't lose track of his swords and his nunchucks. But I'll do a side-by-side, and we'll see him outside of the packaging. But basically, this is just a repaint of the Storm Shadow figure I already have. They've already repainted it once into the Red Ninja figure, which I also have, which was also a Target exclusive that my brother Brian got for me. So yeah, very cool. Now, I actually wasn't planning on showing you this, but just since I'm talking about my brother Brian, he's got a good sense of humor. And one of the things that he got for all of us, so he handed me that thing on, I think, Christmas Eve, and I thought, well, thank you, that's my gift from Brian. Me and my siblings, which I have 5 siblings, we don't exchange presents with, like me and my brother Doug do, because we kind of both like the same nerdy stuff. We both buy each other toys. But I usually don't buy stuff for my sisters and everything else. And I don't really expect Brian to buy me anything either. But usually when he gives me something, it's usually something that I instructed him to buy because it's a store exclusive. But on Christmas Day, he said, oh, I have something else and I have something for everyone. So he went downstairs and he brought up this bag and he handed each of us a portrait of himself. So this here is my brother Brian looking oh so dreamy as, I guess, some sort of Aquaman-like god. Anyway, what inspired him to do these was the Donald Trump NFTs that came out recently, where Donald Trump came up with these digital trading cards of him as an astronaut riding a horse and all these other stupid things. So my brother thought it would be funny, and he came up with a different trading card for each of us, which he framed. So it's him as an astronaut, him with like long, dreamy hair, like he's on the cover of a romance novel. And then I got the Aquaman like God. So, anyway. Funny stuff. Okay, so everything else I have left here is from my wife, Vanessa. She also got me that keyboard and a bunch of the other stuff. But as far as toys, she always comes through. She might need a little bit of direction from me because, like Miguel, she sometimes struggles to keep up with what I buy for myself and everything. So I kind of say, well, you could buy this. I usually give her a few options. And she got me some really cool stuff. So first I'll maybe start with this figure here. This is one of the Ninja Turtle Ultimates figures from Super 7. So this is Fillet, which is the Stingray character from Ninja Turtles. And I've always liked this guy. And I think this is probably the last character that I will buy in Super 7's Ultimate line. Because I was a little too old for Ninja Turtles when they came out. Like, I was young when they first launched. Young enough to watch the cartoons, read the comic books, and buy the original wave of figures. But as the line progressed, it became something more that my little brother was into than I was into. Because I was a bit older, I was into G.I. Joe, Transformers, stuff from the earlier 80s, not really the kind of the late 80s when these guys showed up. So Ray Fillet is probably the last figure that I really have any attachment to from the vintage Ninja Turtles line. So, yeah, when they put out this figure this year, and this came out several months ago now, I'd actually had them pre-ordered, and then I canceled the pre-order because money was getting tight. These figures are really expensive. They're about $80 here in Canada, plus tax. And so I just couldn't justify picking them up. But my local comic shop had them, and they had a sale on before Christmas with 25% off all their action figures. So I kind of nudged my wife and said, hey, that Ray Fillet is 25% off, so that might be a good option for a Christmas present. And she got him for me. And he's pretty cool. He's awesome, actually. He's really big. He's really bulky. And he came with a ton of shit. All those Ultimates figures do. It'll be easier to show you in the insert, but he came with a bunch of extra hands. He came with a little gun here. He came with an alternate head. So he's got kind of a closed mouth head and an open mouth head. So kind of a smiley face and an angry face. He also came with his little sidekick, Fish Sticks. So in the vintage figure, Fish Sticks was just a single color. He was just like a solid orange little accessory. He didn't move at all. This one here, he's fully painted. He's got multiple paint apps. Like he's a yellow fish guy with an orange helmet, black goggles, red dynamite, silver little buckles and everything. Like he's full of articulation, or full of paint apps, and his neck is articulated. So he's kind of an action figure in his own right. So he's really cool. Yeah, and so many accessories. So I'll show you all the accessories in an insert shot. But very, very cool. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention for his accessories, he has this rope accessory, which is really cool. It's real rope, and it's this gold colored rope. It's got almost like a metallic glow to it. It's really cool, like this with a little anchor on the end. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. All right, the last thing I have here is another Marvel Legends multi-pack. So this is a 5-pack. So it came in a box set similar to the Venom set, except even larger. And this one, I don't know if it has a name, Spidey Villains maybe? I don't know. But this pack, I was really excited when this was announced. This is another Amazon exclusive. Because it's got a bunch of characters that I really never thought I would get in action figure form. Hasbro consistently surprises me with their Marvel Legends, and it seems like every few months I'm getting a character that I never thought I would get before. But some of those characters just seemed like long overdue. Like earlier this year, I got Sleepwalker, and then I got Speedball. Now these are characters that are by no means household names, but these are heroic characters. They had their own comic book series that ran for several issues, and then they've been regular guest stars in other books. They usually show up in all the big event books. So even though Sleepwalker hasn't had his own series for several years, he still shows up every time there's like a Secret Wars storyline or something like that. So it always seemed inevitable that those guys should get action figures. So when I finally got them this year, I was stoked. But with this set here, it's villains. Villains are a lot less likely to get made into an action figure if they're obscure, because they have a lot less opportunities to appear than, say, heroes do. And just some of these characters are really obscure and weird. But yeah, Hasbro put them together. They probably wisely put them together in a box set like this, because I don't know if most of these figures would have sold very well had they put them out as individual packages. They probably would have been a lot of peg warmers here amongst this set. But I would have absolutely bought up every one of these guys and been excited to do so. So, now like the Venom set, I was a little perturbed that I had to buy another Spider-Man to get these 4 villains. Because there's 4 villains that I was super excited about, but then they stick a Spider-Man in here. And trust me, I have no shortages of Spider-Mans. Especially this is Spider-Man in his black and white suit, which, just if you didn't know, Spider-Man got this suit for a little while in the 80s before he found out it was actually an alien trying to take over his body. He got rid of it, and it became Venom. That's why Venom now wears this iconic black and white suit. But Spider-Man did sport that outfit for a while. Anyway, earlier this year, I got a really, really nice version of the black and white suit Spider-Man. So even if this figure was that exact same one over again, I really have no use for it. I just thought, like, I don't need this black and white Spider-Man. However, getting him in hand, now I'll tell you, he is not my favorite figure in the set. He did not win me over the same way that Venom did. But there is a spot for this guy in my collection. He's not the throwaway that I thought it might be. Because as soon as you take him out of your hand, you realize, okay, this does not look like the Spider-Man that we got on the packaging. That Spider-Man looked clearly like an adult Spider-Man. The way he's drawn, he looked like how Spider-Man wore his black and white outfit in the 80s. And that's when he was a grown man. This figure here is kind of petite. And the other figures in the box set tower over him. They're at least a head or more taller than him. That's because this is a teenage Spider-Man. And the way the eyes are really big on the mask, that's not how it looked when Spider-Man wore this outfit in the 80s. What we're looking at here is Ultimate Spider-Man when he wore the black outfit. Now, if you're not a comic book nerd, that might not mean much to you. But if you are a comic book nerd, then you know that's kind of a whole different character. Because, I think it was around the year 2000, Marvel launched their Ultimate line of comics, which it was like a whole other universe. They were taking all their characters, they were making them younger, they were starting them fresh. There were some pretty unique spins on some original characters. They weren't slave to the continuity that existed for 40 years. And so you get some really fresh and some really cool stories. And that Ultimate Spider-Man comic book was written by Brian Michael Bendis, who, at the time, I was really loving what he was doing. I've kind of gotten over Bendis a little bit in more recent years. But at the time, he was knocking it out of the park, writing young Peter Parker stories. And they retold the Venom saga, where Spider-Man got the black and white suit, and then he wore it for a little while before he realized it was harmful. He got rid of it. It became Venom. But you can tell by the look of this stuff. The size of it, the shape of the eyes on the mask, and even just the coloration. It's not really black. I don't know if it'll come across on camera, but it's almost more like a metallic purple color. So all those things make it pretty clear to me that this is young Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe in the black outfit, which is technically a figure I don't have in my collection. I do have Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe in his red and blue outfit, but I don't have the black one. So that makes this figure not seem so much like a wasted spot. It has room. My collection has room for him, is what I'm trying to say. All right. So who to talk about in the set? Maybe we'll start with Silvermane. So I wanted this guy just because he's a Spidey villain that I didn't have. He's never been a favorite villain of mine. He's kind of silly, but he was pretty prominent in the comic books right around the time I started collecting comic books in the mid-'80s. So basically, Silvermane was this senior citizen. He was like a crime boss, this old guy, and he had his henchmen out doing crime stuff, and Spider-Man was thwarting all of his bank robberies and all of his heists, and he was getting frustrated. And I can't remember what led to him being basically killed, I think. It might have been in a scuffle with one of the other crime bosses, like Dr. Octopus or the Owl or something. But anyway, Silvermane had to get his head transplanted on to a robotic body that would actually make him powerful enough to battle Spider-Man on his own. So what you got here is an old man head on this big, powerful, muscular robot body. And, this figure looks pretty good. And I think it's mostly reused parts. And it's kind of an interesting choice. I think they mostly reused the body from the Ultimate Beetle. And what makes that really obvious to me is the feet. He's got these little two-toed feet, which I don't love because I don't think Silvermane had two-toed feet. And so that's kind of the first thing you notice when you look at this guy. It really makes him look less than human. But it's not bad. It's a good body otherwise. Like it was a great body when it was the Beetle as originally intended. But I think it works pretty well here. I always kind of thought they would probably make it, if they ever made a Silvermane, it would just make a head and put it on a body of an Ultron or something. But nope, what we got here is pretty cool. A silver Beetle body with a Silvermane head. And we actually did get a Silvermane head on its own a few years ago. It's kind of a long story, but there was a storyline once where they kidnapped the head of Silvermane and then they put it on a little RC car, and so one of the other figures, I think it was Speed Demon or Boomerang, came with a little Silvermane head on just an RC car as kind of a joke accessory. So I have a Silvermane head downstairs, but this head here, I believe it's completely new. It looks pretty good. So, they could have cheaped out and just given us the same old Silvermane head we already had. But nope, we got a new one here, and he's pretty cool. He's got a couple of gun accessories. Guns that we've seen before with other characters. But, yeah, not a bad figure. Next one here, this is another one that's pretty simple in execution. This is the Molten Man, which is a sometimes villain, sometimes ally of Spider-Man. He is, I believe, Liz Allen. This is her stepbrother, Mark Raxton, I think. It's been a while since I've read a Molten Man comic book. But again, back in the early 80s, when I was buying comic books and stuff, this guy was featured pretty prominently. I have quite a few comic books with him back in the day. And so, like I said, he was started off as kind of a villain, but I think it was more of he gained these powers and couldn't control them, and he was maybe misunderstood or lashing out at things, and so he fought Spider-Man. But he actually wasn't really a bad guy, so in later appearances, he was an ally of Spider-Man. And he's basically, for all intents and purposes, a guy just wearing a little Speedo, and then he's made of molten metal. So his body is supposed to be this shiny gold, and there's flames coming off of it. So this figure is, I'm sure, just all reused parts. I'm not sure what body it is, but it's basically just a very simple male buck with no details on it, really. Painted gold. He's got these little flame add-on effects, which you can remove. And these are pieces that would have previously come with the Human Torch and maybe a couple other characters. And then he's got a new head sculpt, which looks perfect for Molten Man as I remember him. He's got kind of this flat top haircut. And he looks pretty great. And this is a character that I really wanted. We did get a Molten Man Build-A-Figure as part of the Spider-Man Far From Home movie line. If you remember in the movie, there was this big multi-metal guy that was like oozing metal. He was a big monster-y thing. So they named that character Molten Man. But he was really nothing like Molten Man. He wasn't actually a character in the movie. He was more just like an elemental. He wasn't Mark Raxton. So we didn't really have a Molten Man. So yeah, this is the first time he's getting done, and he looks great. All right, let's try and wrap this up. I'm getting really raspy here. But these last two I'm super excited about. First up is Razorback. Now, I haven't read a ton of comics with Razorback in there, but he just made a big impression on me when I did read some comic books with him. I think it started off in Spectacular Spider-Man. He was in a story arc, and then he's popped up in a couple other books over the years. But he's just so bizarre in design. He's this big, buff dude with a big, giant, like, boar head, just over his head. So his little human face is poking out of what would be the boar's mouth. It's just such an odd design. The costume's actually really plain otherwise. Like, there's no logo on his chest. There's really nothing super definitive about him. So again, they probably got off pretty cheap reusing parts from other figures. Off the top of my head, I don't know. Maybe like Captain Britain or somebody, because he's probably about that same size, bulk-wise. The head design, like the headdress here, is great. Like, there's a ton of detail in there. Looks awesome. I don't really have any complaints other than to say the headdress, it kind of fits. It sits a little odd on the shoulders. Like, it almost looks like they maybe should have used a bigger body than they did. Like, this guy's already really tall. Like, if you compare him to, say, that Teenage Spider-Man, like, he is way bigger than him. And Razorback was always a big character. But, I don't know, should he have been a little bigger than this even? Like, maybe if they'd used, like, the body for Venom or something on this guy. Because that Venom that I have over here, which now he's buried in other stuff. But that Venom was clearly thicker arms and broader shoulders. And I think this figure might have benefited from some broader shoulders. But otherwise, yeah, he's perfectly silly. I love him. And then the last one that we're going to talk about here is the Human Fly. Now, this guy, this is a character, he hardly ever shows up. I don't know what became of him. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy got killed. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to maybe guess. I actually just recently acquired this guy's first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man Annual. But I did have a couple of appearances, like a couple of comic books with him when I was young, but they were back issues I bought. So, like, if I started collecting Spider-Man around the 280s, I probably went back and bought some issues from, like, the 250s or something that had this guy. And Yeah, so he wasn't a character that ever appeared a whole lot. And in modern times, like when I say modern, I pretty much think of like when I started collecting comic books, so that's a long time ago now. We're talking almost 40 years. He like never shows up. I can't think of the last time this guy would have made an appearance. That's why I'm kind of thinking he might have been killed. There was a storyline in the late 80s where there was a character called the Scourge of the Underworld, and he was going around assassinating villains, and it was usually just like a little epilogue at the end of all these different comic books where you'd show a villain and they'd get a knock at the door and they'd get shot in the head or something, and then some mysterious villain would say, "And justice is served." And it was mostly a Captain America storyline, but it did cross over into other books. And I'm wondering if maybe the Human Fly was one of Scourge's victims, because I haven't seen him around. And even if he was killed by Scourge, every character comes back. I think most of the characters Scourge killed have come back. So yeah, I don't know why we don't see more of the Human Fly. Sure, he looks silly, but he also looks awesome. And for Spider-Man, the Human Fly kind of makes more sense than anybody else for him to be his villain. Like, this guy should be Spider-Man's like arch nemesis. Why is the spider fighting a goblin or a rhinoceros? He should be fighting the Fly. And just the fact that this guy's called the Human Fly, it makes him so much better than if he was just called Flyman or the Fly. The Human Fly has just such a 50s sci-fi B-movie ring to it. I absolutely love it. So he's got these little translucent wings, which are kind of dainty, makes him look like a fairy here, and they can be articulated a little bit. But anyway, he's great, and he's got this really expressive sculpt on his face where he's like freaking out. He's like yelling, and normally I don't like really expressive faces on my action figures. I prefer a more neutral expression, but for some reason, I love it on this guy because he's so weird anyway. So there you go, the Human Fly. And then otherwise, I just have my bin of accessories here. So yeah, there are lots of extra hands. There are extra hands here for Agony. There's the extra Venom face. Anyway, you will have seen all this stuff probably on the insert shots that I'm going to do. So I think that's really all I have to say about my Christmas stuff. So I think it was a pretty great haul, especially for a guy in his 40s who really probably shouldn't be getting so many action figures. I got quite a lot. This is like one of my childhood hauls from when I was a kid. When all I got was toys back then. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with this. I'm looking forward to displaying these figures. And almost best of all, I have something to actually play with. I'm going to go mess around with my keyboard some more and write some terrible music. Anyway, thank you for watching. Again, Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy holidays. I'll be back soon with another video. And I've got my best of the year list coming up also before the end of the week. So make sure you tune in for those. Make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below, and I'll see you next time. Ciao.